Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Maheen, and today, more than ever, we are highlighting the backbone of our nation's economy. That's right, small businesses. They innovate, drive growth, and shape the very fabric of our communities. And in the midst of this dynamic ecosystem is our guest today. From teaching at Western University's Ivey Business School to leading the game-changing fintech company Plooto, Ryan Rego has seen firsthand the transformational power of small businesses. Plooto, if you're not familiar, is revolutionizing how these very businesses handle their finances, simplify and streamline payment processes across North America. Ryan's transition from academic to industry leadership while also playing a pivotal role in supporting small and medium enterprises is a story worth listening to. Let's dive right in. Hi, Ryan. How are you?
Good. Thanks so much for having me, Maheen.
Very pleased to have you with us this afternoon. Now, Ryan, imagine a scenario where partnerships drive transformative success. I know that Plooto is making a great impact in having partnerships and activations, and you have a story to share. Ryan, could you provide an example of a successful partnership that illustrates a positive impact of technology app partner that can have on a business?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what we live and breathe every day at Plooto is how our technology can be a partner for accountants and bookkeepers, as well as the small businesses that they serve at the end of the day. And so in terms of thinking about that positive impact that we're having in like the Canadian ecosystem and the communities around us, I think of it as there's two kind of primary customers that we serve. One is accounting and bookkeeping firms. So these are accountants and bookkeepers that have their own book of clients and small businesses that they serve. And their mission is actually very closely aligned with Plooto, funny enough. And when I look at their websites, I see things like they want to offload the accounting and finance workload of these small businesses so that they can actually go and reinvest in the product that they wanted to build or the company they set to build out instead of being bogged down in the accounting and finance. And that's where we come into. Our mission is to help small businesses with tools that will actually enable them to get out of the day-to-day grind of the payment operations and actually build their business, focus on selling their product, and just managing the other operations that are more critical to their customers and their and products. So those are some of the ways we help those accountants and bookkeepers. We allow them to better offload some of those payment operations from their small businesses. You know, I think we have about 700 or 800 accounting firms on Plooto today, from like Live CA to Connect CPA, and we really help them to scale their practice. They're able to take a lot of that off of the small businesses. So again, they can reinvest in what they set out to build. And then on the flip side, we do have the other customer segment is those individual businesses that come to us directly. And it's really cool to see, you know, if you go on King West in downtown Toronto or on Front Street, some of the restaurants near the office, they actually use Plooto to power their payment processes. So seeing that kind of impact is really, really cool. We have even in our own space, we work out of the 111 building downtown, which is an incubator for tech startups with about 20 to 30 companies. And they use Plooto as well. A lot of them use Plooto to pay their vendors, collect from their customers. So seeing that impact is really, really cool. And one of the things that we often hear in terms of like the impact like us as a technology app partner can have is actually alleviating that Friday afternoon that they might be spending doing their payment operations. They might be writing a check. They might be going to the bank to send a wire transfer. But instead, they get that time back in their day. And so they're saving 14 to 15 hours of time, which then they can then reinvest back into their business instead of, again, doing that manual work. And one small business owner even told us recently how he was able to take his first vacation in years because of Plooto, because they were able to schedule their payments, because they didn't have to spend all that time being at their desk or being in town. They could do it remotely through a product like Plooto. So those are some of the ways that I've seen us positively impact a lot of small business and accounting firms. But there's a whole host of technology app partners out there, and oftentimes these accounting and bookkeeping firms and small businesses have a whole tech stack, as they call it, of apps that really enable them to scale, get out of those manual processes, get out of the, that human error that can result from that, to actually reinvest in their business, reinvest in their firm so that they can grow.
Absolutely. I feel like it's so relevant, especially in the world of technology partnerships, which having a right partner is so crucial. And Ryan, when small businesses are, looking for a right tech app partner, they're already navigating through such a complex tech
Hmm.
landscape. What factors should be at the forefront of their decision-making process?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it's funny, we actually did a webinar on this recently for a lot of our customers and other, I guess, potential customers too. But there's a few key areas I think that we, thought of as our checklist that you want to really make sure that you dive into and use that to vet the app partners that you work with. The first one I always say is the return on investment is something you want to look at. A lot of times people just look at the price and will actually like rule out an app or be in favor of an app just based on the price, and price is part of it, but you really have to look at, what are you getting in return for it, because you get what you pay for. So making sure that you understand what are the total cost savings. Does that allow you to, reinvest in your business? I feel like I'm going to keep saying that, but to actually earn more revenue. And so thinking about it from a little more holistic perspective is one of the things I say is like number one, is just looking at it from that return standpoint. But then there's other things to consider as well as, what's the implementation process look like? How does it integrate with your existing app partners or tech stack? And making sure that it's not a heavy lift, that, you
Right.
can get set up within ideally a few minutes, a few hours at most. You don't want it taking days or weeks just to get started. So a lot of apps like Plooto or, that are on the Xero or QuickBooks App Store are really, really good because they integrate. You plug in, play, and you're ready to go. With us, within 20 minutes, you can start to make a payment on the Plooto app. So you're trying to look for something that's just easy to get set up with. A couple other things to me are like support and security. I think those are top of mind for a lot of accountants and bookkeepers, as well as finance teams within individual businesses. But you want to make sure that, you're getting the right level of support, especially in a world like today where people are using ChatGPT and chatbots and things like that. You definitely don't want, when you have a critical issue, you want to be able to reach out to a person, get that support, with that critical issue, especially in the payment space where you're moving
Right.
money. So we also, we have like live chat, phone support, email, all with minimal wait times. And even if you're on the West Coast, you want to make sure that, within your business hours, you're getting that support.
Mhm.
So that's another thing to look at. Security, like I mentioned, depending on what you're dealing with, like financial data or just personal information, you want to make sure that they're treating it securely. You can enforce 2FA on your users. We live in a remote world. Someone might be working at a coffee shop. You don't want them, leaving their computer and then it doesn't time out, and then someone can get in without even needing a 2FA passcode. So those are some of the other things. And then lastly, I think, this is one that sometimes flies under the radar a little bit. I think price, security, support, those are all top of mind, but actually looking at the business and the values of that business, oftentimes you see them online, and making sure that, they really do think about the customer in terms of how they operate. Our number one leadership principle is to start or only pursue things that have real customer value. So making sure that, those values make sense to you, make sense to your firm, make sense to your small business so that you feel aligned, and understanding why that business is doing what they're doing. And sometimes looking at the founder's story. Like, for example, our co-founders were actually small business owners themselves before they started Plooto. They had a gaming company, which they
Mhm.
sold, and they experienced this problem of payments firsthand, and found that they were underserved by the banks and the other financial services companies out there. So having that, seeing that firsthand, they knew what they wanted to build, and so they continue to build with that small business mindset.
Right.
Is where they're coming from in terms of background. And so you want to make sure that that story, those values make sense, because you want that app partner or that technology to be there well into the future. And so that also ties into just how they're backed and funded. Can you trust that this company is going to be there long term, because you don't want to, in a year or so have to find a new solution. So
Mhm.
those are some of the different areas that I think about, that return on investment, the support, security, implementation, and then lastly, just understanding the business value and sustainability.
No, you've gone quite in depth about the payment automation, and quite interestingly, the evolution of payment automation is quite fascinating. I mean, I'm pretty sure that it's you. probably witnessed this forefront that the payment automation has gone from a nice to have
Yeah.
to a need to have. Um, Ryan, what factors have contributed to this shift in perspective?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. But the first thing to me is, the space that we work in with accountants and bookkeepers, this idea of cloud accounting over the last 10 years, I think has really transformed the space. You've seen a lot more apps come, we talk about app fatigue. Oftentimes there's just a lot more out there, and everyone's kind of following this trend of cloud accounting. And so I think of payments and payment processing in the same way as you do your accounting in Excel. I think some small businesses do, and eventually they move on to QuickBooks or Xero as their accounting software. But the same way today, you wouldn't want to be doing your accounting in Excel. You don't want to be sending checks. You don't want to be going to the bank for a wire transfer when, an app like Plooto exists out there. And so I think because of all these solutions that are coming up, it's really easy to get started, and it's no longer something that's, do I have the time to get set up? It's like, it's really quick to get set up. I need to get this, in order to stay competitive. And you'll find that a lot of other firms, accountants and bookkeepers will find that their peers and their colleagues are using it. Other small businesses will see, their vendors or suppliers or their customers using a payment automation tool. And so just to stay competitive, it's something, like I said, 14 to 15 hours a month for a small business owner. That's a lot of time.
Right.
So if they can put that time back into their business, they can just stay more competitive and stay ahead of the curve. And so that's why I see it as a need to have.
Mm.
And the thing to me about payments and like the payment space that's unique is we solve like the cash flow problem. I think the stat that we always tell new hires or in an interview process and why Plooto exists is 82% of small businesses fail due to poor cash flow management.
Right.
And so when you think about, that being a critical reason why businesses fail, if you have the opportunity to solve that cash flow problem in a really easy way, that's kind of a must-have solution now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are some of the things. And then lastly, when we think about the remote world we live in, this post-pandemic or world where most people are hybrid or in different places across the city, across the country, we've had small business owners tell us they had to drive from one city or town to another in more rural areas to get a check signed by their boss, or go into the bank to send a wire transfer, or go to Canada Post to mail a check and things like that. And again, that takes time, and
Right.
You don't want to necessarily have to do that. So in a remote world, adopting a software or a cloud accounting software to solve your payment problems, it's just a no-brainer and kind of just makes sense.
No, we'd love to dive deep into, efficiency and productivity as well, which are great concerns for small business owners. But we'll do that right after a short break.
Cool.
Efficiency and productivity are two key concerns for small business owners, and there is no doubt about that. Ryan, for businesses considering payment automation, could you outline the key benefits they can expect to see in terms of productivity and efficiency?
Yeah, I think adopting like an automation tool or a technology app partner and bringing that into your business, there's a lot of efficiency and productivity gains to be had. I think the one theme I've touched on today is just the time savings that lead to cost savings for you. So that's like, number one. But I think there's a lot of like kind of subtle, more under the radar benefits when you think about the quality of life for your staff or your team, or, if you have an outsourced bookkeeper, their life's just easier. So their billable hours to you are less. So when they're not having to, write checks or enter in an e-transfer or set up a wire, the quality of life for those employees is just better. It's an easier job. It's faster. It's just sexier too, like to use an app rather than, write something out by hand. So that's one of the benefits that I think about. Your vendors, for example, in Plooto's case, are happier. And then that cash flow at the end of the day is another benefit that you get out of it, because you're just more efficient in terms of how you manage things. So those are some of the ways that I see that efficiency and productivity take place. And then lastly, with automation, there's fewer human errors, and one human error sometimes, like a misprinted check or an extra zero, can cause a whole host of problems. And you kind of don't have to worry about that if you're using technology and some sort of automation tool. So those are the variety of reasons why I think like it's important.
Right. Now, I know that we've touched based on efficiency and performance, but balancing innovation and performance is a tightrope walk. Ryan, how can leaders strike a balance between fostering innovation within their teams while maintaining a focus on consistent high performance?
Yeah, that's like a tough question, because you want to keep, be efficient and focused, but you also want to allow time for like creativity and innovation to take place. But I think of it as kind of going hand in hand. Performance or high performance, part of it should be innovation, because you don't want people to just do a task to get it done, or I think they have to check an item off the to-do list and then be done with the work that they're doing. You want them to constantly be thinking about how can we make things better, make processes better. So, at Plooto, like it starts with who we hire. I think that's like the first thing you've got to do to make sure you're balancing that, is like start with people who are just high performers in general, who are motivated, who are excited to get up in the morning to do the work that they do, and really invest the time in terms of like getting to know that candidate, asking them the why they do what they do, why are they excited about your company. So I think that's the first thing, is just really hiring good people. But then once they join your company, is making sure that the culture that you create as a leader and as, top level management is one that, again, values those things like innovation and rewards high performance. So making sure that that culture is there. And then I'd say personally, how I try to do that within my team is by, setting, goals and metrics come from leadership, communicating that, but then allowing the team to figure out how they want to achieve that. How do they want to get there? Allowing them that space to operate is one way I think that you allow for that innovation. So you want to have clear direction, but you don't want to be overly directive and authoritative in terms of what needs to be done. You want to give them that space to achieve that outcome. So that's how I think you can allow for that innovation, but also ensure that you're hitting those performance metrics at the end of the day.
Great insight there. Now, Ryan, we follow this mantra, which is wisdom distilled, from experiences invaluable. Now, before we wrap up our conversation today, what is that one piece of advice that you would give out to businesses that are navigating through the complex landscape of technology, partnerships, embracing payment automation, and striving for high performance teams? What would be that one piece of advice?
Yeah, that's a tough one to boil it down to one piece of advice. But I think like it comes down to just being thorough with how you vet a technology or vet a new candidate that you might bring onto your team. But then also not being afraid to just make the jump, knowing that, there's going to be challenges along the way. It's not going to be perfect. You might have some hiccups, but at the end of it, you'll go through a learning process yourself. You'll probably come out with a better outcome because you took that chance. So being thorough and thoughtful, but then not being afraid to embrace it and jump in at the end of the day, because I think like the long-term outcome is going to be much better than staying the status quo.
Mm-hmm. No, what an enlightening, conversation it was, Ryan. You really provided a compass for businesses in their journeys that are navigating through this complex world of technology today. So thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, no, it was a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. And yeah, if any small businesses want to get started with Plooto, don't hesitate to reach out.
Amazing. Thank you.
Cool.
A big thank you to Ryan Rego for joining us today and shedding light on the fintech landscape, his journey, and Plooto's incredible growth. As we wrap up today's episode, we'd like to extend our deepest gratitude to our amazing partners, our exclusive banking partner RBC for continuously supporting and nurturing the SME landscape, to our exclusive shipping partner UPS for ensuring that businesses remain connected across distances, and last but certainly not least, our exclusive accounting software partner Xero for making financial processes smoother for businesses everywhere. Thank you all for tuning in. Until next time, keep innovating, keep growing, and stay connected with the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast.